All right. Ooh, hi, Linda.
Thank you.
Hi, Aisha.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. How are you doing? Hey, Aisha, are you there?
I think
Okay,
it's still
seems
connecting.
Yeah, she's not connected to
yeah,
audio yet. Almost.
yeah. Great. How is everyone's Friday going? Thank you for joining in. Hey, Patience. Hey, Linda. Pretty much you two are here. So, okay, Halimat is also available. Hi, Halimat. How are you doing? You can unmute yourself and just say hi. We will love to hear your voice. Also, if it's fantastic for you or if you're okay with it, please go ahead and tell us where you're joining in from. Today, we will be speaking again or we have a fantastic facilitator. Jennifer Cox will be speaking on public speaking isn't scary. And I'm really excited because she does have a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge as in regards to this field. I've seen her do a lot. Again, she has been nominated for a lot of women in technology awards, and very well so. She does have the experience. So I'm really excited, to always have her on board. And just so you know, she is she has been back to back with us, following us every single step of the way, every single step of the journey. Thank you so much, Halimat, for your conversation. You said you're very well, thank you. You're joining in from Nigeria. It feels great to be here. Whoop whoop. It does the best way to spend our Fridays, before we jump into the weekend. So we do have Patience. Patience says she's joining in from Kenya. Glad to be here. We're happy to have you, Patience. Thank you so much for joining. Very empty because it's going to be filling out with a lot of what Jennifer will run today. And I do have my pen as well, just so I take all the notes. And please, by all means, ensure that you pay as much attention as possible, because I want to make sure that when it's the question and answer session, we get as much juice from Jennifer as possible. I want her to go back and be like, whoa, that community just sucked everything from me. So, so, so that's what I'm hoping for today. All right, we have Caroline. Caroline says Uganda in the house. Yeah, Uganda in the house. Thank you for representing Uganda. Looking forward to a great discussion. Absolutely. Fauza says she's joining in from Nigeria. Nice to be. Hi, Fauza. We're so happy to have you. We have Ayo. Ayo did join in last week. So hi, Ayo. Thank you for joining in again. She's joining in from Abuja, Nigeria. It is always amazing to be in the company of amazing women. Absolutely. And she says, thanks to Jennifer for having sessions back to back with us. Yes, absolutely. It takes a lot to have someone, you know, do this for us. So thank you so much, Jennifer. I will give you the floor because I just wanted to blow your trumpet, get you all, crazy and all of that, and give us as much as possible. I will read the last message here, and it's from Juliana. She says, hey, I am Juliana, she, her, joining from Stockholm. We're so excited to have everyone in the house. So I will give the floor to Jennifer because I don't want to take as much time as possible from her. So Jennifer, you have the floor. She's going to be speaking today on public speaking isn't scary. And I absolutely believe that it isn't scary. And she says, I promise. Jennifer, how can you promise that public speaking isn't scary? Please go ahead.
I know, even when I came up with the title for it, I was thinking there's bound to be somebody who goes, but you promised. But I do promise. What I want to do today really is take the fear factor out of it to show you how normal this is and how normal it should be considered. And really the when it comes to public speaking, a lot of the fear about public speaking is something that we create in ourselves. It's not actually coming from the people around us. It's absolutely something that's we're creating in ourselves. And if we do that, then we can also control it in the same way that when we feel bad about something that we do or negative about something that we're doing, we create a negative space around ourselves, and it is possible to change that mindset and make it a positive experience. I can turn almost any experience into a positive experience by making it a learning experience as well, but we'll get into that. So yeah, so public speaking isn't scary, I promise. So I'm going to stick with that. Feel free to come back and call me on it later if you think that that wasn't true. So what are we going to do today? And this is, what do you want to say? So I'm going to do the same thing right now that I would expect you to do if you're going to public speak. And you want to think about what it is that you want to say. So you can public speak about anything. A lot of us have to do it for work. You might do it with groups of people, maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe 20 people, maybe 2,000 people, whatever it is that you're talking to. All of these points are the same. You know, nothing changes in these rules except maybe you have more space to walk around if you're in a bigger arena, and that's about it. So you want to think about what it is that you want to say. So for example, I'm going to do this now for my delivery. So I'm going to tell you and set the expectation what we're going to say. So I am going to talk to you about public speaking. I'm going to demystify it. I'm going to make sure that you feel comfortable with the idea of it, and that by the end of this session, you should feel revitalized and maybe even a little bit excited about doing public speaking, but definitely should not be fearful of it anymore. And then the next thing that you will do when you public speak is to do it. So you're going to actually present whatever it is that you want to present in whatever way you wish to present it. So public speaking and presentations don't all have to be limited to PowerPoints and, you know, microphones or people all in a line facing you. There's lots of different ways that you can approach this. And if you have the opportunity to do that, to change the layout, then do that, because it's you that's delivering the talk. So they'll adapt to whatever it is that you need. And then at the end of the session, what you should always do is the tell part. Tell them what it is that you told them. Tell them, you know, you repeat and recap basically over what it is, the purpose of your talk. And I find using the tell, do, tell is very similar to a sales process where it's tell, show, tell. If you're doing demonstrations for sales, they say, tell them what you're going to tell them, show them what it is that you wanted to show them, and then tell them what you've told them. So it's the same idea here. And I find this when I'm public speaking about something that I have lots of, let's say, facts and figures, and I know I'm going to struggle with all of the detail of it. You know, it's less of a gut delivery, shall we say. I know that I need to have all those notes to hand, but when I use the tell, do, tell approach to it, it makes it a lot easier, because I'm also reminding myself why I'm here. So the tell being, I'm here to tell you about public speaking, and that it's not scary and that we're going to be good. I'm now going to do it. And at the end of it, then I'll recap and tell you what I did that made it that way. But it helps me to structure my talk. And also, if you're intimidated by doing something, like maybe you've got an hour-long talk, or somebody gives you 2 hours to talk to people, it's a lot of time to fill if you're not a particularly chatty person. But doing this allows you to break down your talk into digestible pieces as such, and takes a lot of the mystery or the fear away from what you're going to fill that time with. Okay, so always know what it is that you want to say before you start. It keeps it nice and concise then from there. So preparation, everyone knows the saying, preparation is key. Of course it is. And especially if you're nervous about doing a presentation, preparation is absolutely key. So as I have there, it's the key to being calm. I've done lots of different kinds of deliveries, and I remember one of them that I was the most intimidated by to begin with was during COVID. It was a delivery to B-Sides in Dublin. It was on social engineering, which I was always fascinated by, but it was to a really technical audience. And there's nothing I find more intimidating for a technical person than to deliver a technical talk to a technical audience. And I always, you know, the imposter syndrome creeps in, and I'm always thinking, oh my gosh, these people are going to know so much more than me. And what if somebody calls me out, or what if somebody makes a comment? And I mean, at least in a remote forum, it's a little easier to control those things than in person, and they don't happen as much as you might think they do. All I could do to alleviate any concerns I had around that was to prepare to within an inch of my life. So I did all of my research. I had done plenty of reading on it anyway, because it was a subject that interested me. I built my slides. I made sure to test all the materials I had, especially any facts, figures, quotes, anything like that that I'm giving that can be tested, can be checked by people. I made sure to go back and double check that I had the quotes were from the, that I was quoting them as being from the right people, that the percentages I was talking about were correct, and that the examples I was given, I was using the right brand names, the right criminal names, whatever it was that I was using in the presentation at the time, that all of that was correct. I mean, you have the little notes section on screen if you're using presentations. I personally, I'm rubbish at using the notes because I get way too distracted by trying to read the notes, and it affects my delivery. But it's there if you need to use it. Sometimes I will put one word in it or two words in it in order to make sure that that key point that I want to get across, that if for some reason I go blank, or the fear kicks in, which can happen, and I public speak a lot, and it still can happen, and that I have that one little support there, being a single word that's in the notes that keeps me back on point for each slide. And I tend to actually do it in the slides, so I don't use notes. I use pictures or single words, as you see here, that help me get, it triggers the conversation in my head. It triggers what it is that I want to deliver, and it's enough for me then to go from there. Some people will, if you're really, really nervous, what you may want to do is actually rehearse almost a script for it. And whilst that you might think, well, how is that going to come across as a delivery? Any script that has been rehearsed enough can be delivered like second nature, like conversation. How do you think actors do it? I worked in theater for years before I ever got into tech. I always found learning scripts difficult, but I used to learn them based on where I was positioned on stage. So use whatever tools you have to. If you're preparing and you want to stick to a script because you're nervous, then absolutely do that. But make sure that you give yourself triggers and keys so that it automatically kicks into your muscle memory, with regard to your brain or your physical muscle memory, that I stand over here when I talk about how we move forward, and I stand over here when I talk about the past, this kind of stuff, so that it makes it easy for you, should you feel overwhelmed momentarily or nervous at any point, to pull yourself back into where you should be at that stage. I'm not going to deny that any of these things happen. They absolutely can happen to everyone, even the most accomplished speakers. What I want to get across today is that let's assume they do, and what do we do in those scenarios? So yes, preparation, absolutely. All your research, all your facts, all of your figures. When you have every possible question that you're going to be asked considered, then you're as prepared as you can be for this event, and nothing can go wrong that is within your control. That's an important statement too. Now, nothing can go wrong that is within your control. You could have a power outage, things that other people can control, that kind of stuff can happen. But if you're well prepared, then you won't have to deal with feelings of any of it being your responsibility. You're prepared, you're good to go. Prepare for other scenarios too. Prepare for what would you do if the power went out. Prepare for what would you do if you forgot your slides. Prepare for, what would you do if you forgot to eat beforehand and your stomach is rumbling? What happens? Or you did eat beforehand and you feel sick, or there's one person in the audience and you expected there to be 50 people in the audience. Prepare mentally for all of those things. If you're really, really nervous, walk yourself mentally through those scenarios, and it will alleviate a lot of the anxiety there. So what is it that you're afraid of? In many cases, the things that people are afraid of when they public speak are moot points, as I would call it. As in, they're afraid that people will think that they're not good at what they do, or people won't be able to hear them, or people will think this, that, and the other. And the funny part is that, as a general rule, when people are watching you speak, whether it's remotely or on a stage, why are they doing that? It's because they want to hear what it is that you have to say. People don't generally come to talks hoping that you're going to fail, or waiting to see you fluff your lines or press the wrong button on your computer. People don't attend for that reason. People attend because they've heard of you or they've heard of your topic and they want to learn something from it. They actually are there because they want to hear it. And often, obviously, in a workplace, maybe not everybody wants to hear it, but they're there because they're employed. They work for that company, and this is something that they have to do. So we're putting a lot of energy and worry into a fear that people will think a certain way about you while you're on stage, and it just uses up your energy, because they're not giving it any energy. They're just there listening to what it is that you have to say. And another thing around that as well, people will often worry about, what if I trip over my feet? What if I stumble with my words? What if I skip a slide, or I, anything that might be embarrassing on that stage. Every single person that's sitting in your audience or listening to you present also feels that way. So I can guarantee you that if you fell over on stage and got up, that there is not one person in that stage that is going to make fun of you for it, because they're all thinking, oh my God, I'm just so glad it wasn't me. That's it the whole time. So I want you to think about, and feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm happy to take actual examples of what it is that you're afraid of. My biggest fear was always just that I would fall over on stage, or that I would completely forget what I was talking about, which is kind of interesting because, I'm at a stage in my life where I hit perimenopause, and forgetting what you're talking about halfway through a sentence is common occurrence now. So I've had to face that fear whether I wanted to or not. But prior to that, it was about, falling over on stage or looking stupid. And as soon as you start to realize that the world doesn't revolve around you, and people are more concerned about how stupid they might look than they are about how stupid you might look, it actually gets a whole lot easier to stand on that stage when you realize that you're the center of your own universe, not everybody else's. And it sounds like a slight, but it is actually really important to appreciate that. It suddenly makes, for me anyway, it made me feel much more kind of like one of the gang, as opposed to, being a standout or a risk of embarrassment then from there. So think about what it is that you're afraid of. And like I say, if anyone wants to pop anything in the chat specifically, I'm happy to take that. I'll talk about it on the Q&A. Don't be afraid to admit it. You can put in your notes to Dorothy if you don't want to say them publicly in the chat. I think you can select. Yes, you can. You can select Dorothy or myself specifically, and I can take those questions then at the end also. So far we've practiced and done all of our preparation. We've identified that I'm afraid of falling flat on my face and forgetting my words, and we're moving forward then from that. So the key then after that, so I've got all my preparation done. I've accepted that if I fell over, that's not the worst thing that could ever happen. People might get a giggle out of it. What I would probably do is get a giggle out of it myself and then move on from there. So rehearsing is the next thing. So coincidentally, we've had somebody just mention in the chat that they're afraid of stuttering or stammering. And I worked with a mentee once who had a speech disfluency, and she wanted to be a public speaker. And for her, it was rehearsing. So perfect timing for that statement. So for her, I knew, because four of them all saw a speech therapist at some stage, but 3 of my 4 boys had a disfluency, had a stutter. And I was absolutely the worst influence on that for them, because I talk so fast and I'm often rushing from one thing to the next and demanding information now. So I had to learn to calm down and listen. So when I was mentoring the girl who wanted to do public speaking, I learned to just stay quiet and let her take her time, so that she was relaxed enough to go through that process with me. And then she rehearsed it with me over and over and over and over, so that she was living and breathing her talk. And then when the time came to do the presentation, she asked me, she says, what do I do if I start to stutter? Or what do I do if I'm tripping over my words in it? And I said, you just take a moment and then go again. I said, there's nobody in that audience that's going to go, what, or faster. I said, they're just going to wait for you. So take your time and do it, do it again. Finish your sentence, take a breath, whatever you find helps you relax and get over it. The people in the audience want to hear what you have to say. They will wait. They will be patient. And the more you rehearse it, the more you're going to realize that people will be patient. And it's important to find yourself an audience that supports that. So one of the things that was specific to that example, but one of the things I have here is about gathering your go-to test audience. So I have a couple of people that I always go to. My sister, for starters, knows nothing about tech. not even remotely interested in tech. And I take all of my tech presentations to her. And you go, why? I said, because if I can take my presentation to an audience that's not remotely interested in what it is I've got to talk about, and she walks away from it understanding something or feeling like the presentation was remotely interesting, I had a good vibe, then I know it's going to appeal to the audience that I have. Also, because my sister is my trusted confidant, she will also tell me, you move your hands too much, or you've said that before, or what about the attitude on this one? She will be brutal if I need it. And also she will be my number one supporter and I have done this many a time, if I get to halfway through my presentation and I'm in tears because it just isn't coming together for me, she is going to cut that off at the pass and she is going to big me up, and I'm going to move forward with a better presentation from that. We have all done it. I wasn't born able to present, and I wasn't born, super confident with regards to speaking in front of people. All of it comes with time and practice and great support systems. So rehearsing with the right audiences. So if you're doing a presentation for work, find somebody who's at home who will support you to present that too. And then if it's, depending on what it is and how important it is to you, maybe find some people in work. I've often used people in other departments to trial a presentation with, so that I can see if they'll gauge interest in it from my department, or they might know people in my department. But get yourself a couple of different people that you can do this with and establish that precedent. So where you'll say, okay, I'm going to have 3 talks that I'm going to target, that I'm going to set a goal where I want myself to do 3 talks before the end of the year. And just say to them, is it okay if I pop something in your diary when I identify or find these 3 talks that I want to do, so that we can practice it before the event? Get their agreement ahead of time, and then you just need to send out the invites when you decide what you want to do. And do it as often as you need to do it. So usually the first one goes terribly, second one goes much better, and by the third one, you and them are probably bored of hearing it because you've got it so good at that stage by now. And then you're good to move on from there. So even rehearsing by yourself, if there's no one else around. Some people say use a mirror. I tend to turn on my Zoom and talk to myself. And I've done it when I've been traveling and practicing for a talk, just to get used to hearing your own voice and hearing the accent, because my accent sometimes neutralizes a little bit more when I speak, and it depends entirely what audiences I'm speaking to. If I've got, global audiences, as in people that are not from Ireland, then I will definitely slow down and attempt to be clear. If I'm speaking to people that are local to me, I will speak just as fast as they do, and I'll often use things like colloquialisms that are relevant to the local audience. So yeah, rehearsal all the way. And then what do you do when you're there, when you're on the stage or in the room or doing your presentation? People worry about what's going on in their head during that isn't the actual presentation. So now you've prepared for it, and you have rehearsed it, and you've tackled the fear in your mind of what might be happening. When you're there and you're doing your presentation, especially if you're talking about something that is important to you. So I always consider 2 kinds of topics. There's things that I know a lot about that I can present, and there's things that I feel a lot about that I can present. And I don't always have the same passion for the things that I know a lot about as I do for the things that I feel a lot about that are important to me. But in both cases, what I do have to constantly remind myself to do is to be in that moment. So people may leave the room while you're in it, especially if there's a conference, something like that. It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It may mean that they need a week, or they're trying to catch 2 or 3 different talks if it's a big conference, or they're meeting somebody outside, or maybe they're bringing in more people, whatever they're doing. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter to you. So don't be fazed by that. What you need to focus on is, are you getting your point across? You need to think about that goal. If people are there and people will make eye contact with you, you can, connect with them that way. Make sure you look around the room, see the different people that are making eye contact with you. Do that early in the presentation, because what you'll find immediately, and especially as a female speaker, is we spot all the other women in the room, because there's never that many of us when it's a tech event anyway. And the women will be so much more supportive naturally in those environments too, if there's a woman on stage, especially again in the tech sector. So make eye contact with people, have a look around the room, gauge whether they're listening or they're interested, and then cherry pick a couple. Those who smiled at you when you looked at them, cherry pick those and go back to those faces. That's your support system while you're doing the talk. So take that energy on board and have that keep you going. It's a lot easier than you think. And people will naturally, once you've made that connection through eye contact, people will naturally continue to keep that eye contact with you and make sure that they keep the momentum going from there. And if you do that and focus on the positives, the person that's making the eye contact, the person that's smiling, even if it's the person that's just holding the door open in the back of the room and no one else is interested in what you've got to say, then use that person. But that keeps you focused and motivated because the energy is positive moving around the room for you at that time. So it's a lot easier to keep your energy up in your presentation and to keep going through your presentation when that's happening. And like I say, I have yet to come across, many people that are negative or bring negative energy into a room like that. I've often presented to a room of people that I know are not interested in the content that has to be presented. Sometimes when you do a lot of technical content, that can happen. But that said, there's always somebody, even if they're not interested, you have supporters in that room. They're all there to, they ultimately have come there because they want to hear what you want to say, what you're going to say. And even if you're in a dark room and you're lit up on the stage, you'll be able to see the first few rows of people, but make that connection. You need that human connection to motivate you to keep going then as well. So pacing is really important. And I'm an individual who speaks generally really, really quickly. I'm trying my best to slow down. I'm getting better at it, but I still have a tendency to go fast. And if I get excited or nervous, I tend to go fast also. And I'm aware of my tics when I get nervous. I used to scratch my head all the time when I get nervous, which I didn't see until I watched a video of myself, and I was mortified. And as soon as I worked that out of my system, I just developed something else that I did. I'd fidget with my hands or put my hands in my pocket. Knowing about those kind of tics is important. Changing them is not critical. You also are allowed to have a personality when you're presentation. Personality is really important. When you're doing a presentation, it helps people to connect to you. So don't worry too much about any of those things that you do. In fact, probably embrace them and make more of them because it differentiates you from everybody else. So when it comes to pacing, consider your audience. So when I talk about this being good for you and for your audience, you may be comfortable speaking at 100 miles a minute. But if your audience aren't local to you or aren't first language speakers the same language as you, then that's going to be a challenge for them. They're not going to understand or be able to follow what it is that you're saying. So try and find out as much as you can in advance about the audience that you're going to speak to. Obviously, if it's in the workplace, you're going to know that audience already. But if it is in a social setting or in a different kind of a community, make yourself familiar with the kind of audience that's going to be attending, so that you will know about, culturally, gender wise and language wise, what you need to pay attention to when it comes to your pacing and your presentation. So I have presented to groups. I'll be doing it in October, actually going over to Hungary. So I'll be presenting to groups where English is their second language. So for me, that means that I need to reduce my pacing a good bit because I want to make sure that the message that I'm communicating is really, really clear and that they can understand it. And whilst they're all great English speakers, the pace that I would normally speak at is going to be way too fast. Even English speakers find that way too fast sometimes. So bear that in mind. And if you can get your head around that before you get on the stage, it's a lot easier to practice that. Again, we're back to rehearsal. So even if you're sitting there with your sister like I would, and you say, okay, I'm going to speak to an audience and they're all French speakers and English is their second language. So I am going to speak slower than I ordinarily speak. And I want you to tell me, do you notice that I'm slower than usual? Or not? Am I too slow or whatever it is? It's another thing you want to ask your rehearsal audience to consider and comment on afterwards to you. If they're not noticing that you've changed your pace, then you need to change your pace even more. Then staying calm. This one is actually a whole lot easier than you think. I have a few kind of tricks for this, I guess. Lots of people have different things that they do when they're concerned about staying calm on stage, you know, that they're nervous, they have all this nervous energy, they're going to fidget, and they're going to stumble, their pace is going to go awry, all of those things. There's obvious things that you can do beforehand, which is take deep breaths, relax, close your eyes. All of those things are, of course, very useful. And what I find particularly useful is to remind myself that all of the people that are listening to me are also human beings. And human beings at the core just want to be liked or appreciated or heard. So when I speak, I like to try and use examples of things that remind people that I'm human so that they can relate to those things as well. When I speak in front of a physical audience, I like to make eye contact with them and check in with them. And depending on what I'm talking about, I might make some commentary about the kind of audience that there is, or the things that are surrounding us in that environment. So it kind of creates this bubble that we're in together, and it makes that connection with people from there. I know I spoke about a human connection earlier, and that's something that's really important with regards to staying calm in any scenario. I remember being in labor and I was not public speaking at the time, but I remember being in labor and going into the hospital, and my husband was parking the car. And when I was sat in reception in the hospital, a woman came over to me, and I was in the height of labor. I couldn't see anyone around me at the time, in quite a bit of pain. And a woman came over to me and she was checking, was I okay? And her instinctive reaction to seeing me in pain was to do anything she could to help me, speak to me, remind me to breathe, because you do forget. You know, to put her hand on my shoulder to ask me, is there anything that she can get me for those few minutes when my husband was parking the car? So humans instinctively want to help each other. And no matter where you are or what you're doing, I mean, I didn't expect that from a complete stranger in the hospital at the time, but they do. They don't like seeing other people uncomfortable or other people in pain. And if you can remind yourself of that when you're going on stage, they are here to hear what I've got to say. They are human too. They want to see me succeed. They are my people because they're there for the same reasons as you. We have a human connection. We are all in this together. You can remind yourself, make a mantra, write it down, whichever is the most important thing to you that makes you feel more calm or settled in that scenario. And remind yourself of that before you get on stage, as you're getting on stage, and when you are on stage. If you find that you can feel your heart racing, or you're starting to hyperventilate a little, and you think you're going to lose the run of yourself, what I tend to do in those scenarios is I stop. I stop for about 3 or 4 seconds, and I just smile and, you know, have a look or take a deep breath and carry on. Just take that moment to acknowledge how I'm feeling right now, and then move on from there. And it is as easy as that. So even if you take a minute now and try and imagine it, try and imagine that you're on a stage, and there's 100 people sat in front of you, and they want to hear about whatever your number one hobby is that you're so interested in and you want to talk about. You can share that with them. And you have been speaking already for 2 or 3 minutes, and you can feel yourself getting really anxious and getting really worked up, and your heart just pounding out of your chest, and the fear kicks in where you're like, I'm going to stumble, I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to, you know, talk too fast, I'm going to forget important bits of information. And that's the moment at which your brain wants you to think, you know, oh no, we can't do this. But if you take that moment and remind yourself that everybody else in the room will feel exactly the same way, doing exactly the same thing. They're all there because they want to hear what you've got to say. They're the same as you. They all have blood in their bodies and air in their lungs. They all function the same way as you, and they all would look for the same support that you have or are looking for at that particular time. And I find, and hopefully you will too, that helps me. We are but humans, all of us. I remember when I was at several stages in my career, but mostly it's like 10 or more years ago, if I ever spoke to anyone who was in leadership, in management, in senior management, certainly anyone that was C-level or executive, or the local mayor, I used to be so intimidated. I used to allow myself to feel like I wasn't good enough to be in their presence. And sometimes you'd meet ones who treat you that way. But when I understood and learned the lesson that we are all human, we all bleed and we all breathe, it didn't bother me anymore. All of these people, whether they're C-levels or executives or famous or public speak to 30,000 people every second weekend, they all have to make their dinner and they all have to eat food and they all have to sleep at night to get their rest. And they all see doctors when they're sick and they all have to get a bit of fresh air and they all have to pick up their dog poop after their dogs like the rest of us do. You know, they're just normal human beings like the rest of us are. And you are on that stage and they are in that audience. And when I remind myself of that, I find it so much easier. It doesn't intimidate me at all. And hopefully that will help for you then too. So what I want to do next, this you'll go, this is a different picture. It doesn't fit any of the other pictures that we've had so far. And that is true because this is a picture of me. I used to use this when I was teaching people how to do public speaking. And I used to use this as the worst case scenario example. And you might be going, why is this a worst case scenario? That looks like a lot of people paying attention to a person, that little teeny tiny me on the stage back when I used to have long dark hair before I shaved it all off and accepted I was grey. But I was in the convention centre in Dublin, and it's an interesting story with regards to worst case scenarios and getting over it. This picture, to me, was one of my most favorite pictures. I actually have it printed and on the wall in my room, even though it says 1 of 5 on the top because it was from somebody else's Instagram. But in that moment, it was absolutely not my most favorite moment. And I still have the video of this talk. In the first 2 minutes in the video, knowing the story would make that first 2 minutes sound very different to you. But I was at the event. It was a Women in Tech event that was on in the convention centre in Dublin. I had been given the name of the room that I was going to present in, and I was doing a talk on work-life balance. One of my first real public talks ever. It was back in 2019. I'd often done presentations in work, but I hadn't done a lot of public speaking at that point. So I Googled the room in the convention center. I looked up some pictures and I was like, cool, that room, you know, it seats about 200 people. I can see where the stage is. I can see where the monitor is. I can visualize myself walking around that space, which is a really good thing to do as part of your preparation for public speaking if you can. And then we went to the event. We were in workshops. We met loads and loads of fabulous women. We were going from talk to talk to talk. And then my talk was coming up and I was told I had to be there 15 minutes before the talk started so that I could get my mic on to do my thing. And when I went into the room 15 minutes before it started, I realized that every single room on that floor had the same name. There wasn't just the one that I was in. So then, of course, I started to panic because the sign outside the room that I thought I was supposed to be in did not have me on the list. Now, the clock is ticking. I'm getting closer to the time at which I'm supposed to present. By the time I was willing to accept that I wasn't in this room and that I might be in another room, I had 10 minutes left before I was supposed to get on stage. And I knew the people organizing the event were not going to be happy with me. I hate to be late. They're going to wonder where the hell I am. And there was somebody introducing people in between all the talks who was no doubt at this stage wondering if I was going to even turn up. And I just hate to put people out. So I walked around the venue with my sister, who was doing a really good job of staying calm and acting like this wasn't a big deal, whilst I was absolutely sweating and starting to hyperventilate. And we eventually found the banner that had my name on it. And the banner that had my name on it was outside the biggest room in the whole convention center that hosted 1,200 people. At this stage now, it was 5 minutes before I was supposed to be on stage. And I was standing outside the room with her going, nope, I am not doing it. There is no way. I am not prepared for this. I am mentally prepared to be in a room with 200 people, not a room with 1,200 people. This is not happening. And I was so grateful to have had her there with me. She did a really good job of talking me off the edge whilst gently nudging me forward into the room where the sound person was at the back of the room. I walked over. They, of course, spotted me and they were like, Jennifer, where are you? You're literally on stage in 3 minutes. We need to get you mic'd up and go. The sound person was, as far as this picture is concerned, would be in our side of the picture, just to the right. And they wired me up. I gave my sister my handbag and my leaflets, everything I had on me, because I was in a panic. And I totally forgot that in my handbag, I had the cue cards that I needed for the talk, and that I was already nervous about doing without doing it in front of 1,200 people. They mic'd me up. She was gone to sit as close to the front as she possibly could. I took a walk around the right-hand side up to the front to the lady that was going to introduce me, who was proper excited to see me at that stage because she was starting to think I wasn't coming. We had 2 minutes, maybe 1.5 minutes of chat whilst the last person was finishing and she was getting ready to introduce me on stage. I then realized I hadn't got my cue card, so panicked even more. Was trying to see if I could catch my sister's eye, but in a room that size, I had no idea where she had sat at this stage. And then I was introduced, walked up on stage, and realized, I just had that second where I stood there and thought, oh, uh-oh, there's no going back from this moment right now. And what I did is I locked eyes immediately with 3 women who were about 3 or 4 rows back on the front from our view of that picture. It's on the right hand side, but from me as a speaker, I was on the left hand side. And they gave me the biggest beaming smiles before I ever said a word. They had to have seen the pure panic on my face. Now I was smiling and I was like, hey, this is great, and trying to hide it, I thought. They had to have seen it. And I latched onto those mentally. I remember that was the moment where I thought, they want to hear what I have to say. I can do this. I have rehearsed it. I have prepared for it. I have, I've drilled it so many times. The only thing that I wasn't prepared for at that point was the environment that I was in, because I thought I was going to be in a smaller room. So once I locked eyes with these women and saw that they were on my side, then I took a breath and I was able to look more around the room and see that there was nobody there that was going, hey, you've forgotten your cue cards. There was nobody there that was heckling me from the crowd. My dog has just come in. You want to come get him, Oliver? My son is going to come get him. There was nobody there that was against me. And so I immediately relaxed. I'd love to share the video. Feel free to ping me if you want to. You'll see in the first 2 minutes, you'll see that happen, that fast-paced, I'm so excited bit of conversation that's happening. And then within about 2 or 3 minutes, you can see me settle into it. And that was really the transition between, holy hell, I am never going to be able to do this, total panic, to hang on there. They want to hear what it is that I have to say. And that's how real and how true that what I have said so far really is. When I talk about I promise, if you use those techniques, it is really possible to invoke them. And I did it in that particular instance, and I have done it ever since that instance. And that's the biggest audience I've ever spoken to, was 1,200 in that room, and 1,200 women. Again, about speaking to people who understand and know your experience, which we often tell ourselves, oh, they know more than us. But in this case, they wanted to hear what I had to say. They had other rooms they could have gone to, that they could have, other talks they could have listened to, but they were there to hear that one. So I just wanted to share that everybody has an experience like that. Things go wrong. I have plenty. I have the falling over experience. I have the forgetting my words experience. I have the being unprepared experience, the wrong venues and missed events. All of these things will happen at some point, but how you deal with it and how you move on or get over it is really going to be the tell for how you proceed then from there. And none of these situations where something went wrong or I wasn't at my most perfect, none of them have impacted my ability to deliver public speeches in the future. And none of them have reduced any interest that people have in hearing me speak. So none of it mattered, not a bit. I just moved on and went on to the next thing then from there. So when it's all over, what happens? So you've prepared for your talk, you have rehearsed your talk, you've accepted and walked through all the possible things that can go wrong, and in your head you're prepared for those scenarios. Maybe something did go wrong and you've moved beyond it. You've done your talk, you've stayed in the moment while you were doing your talk, made your connections with people that were there. You've concluded at the end and told everybody, okay, here's what I want to talk about, here's the summary, and I'm going to move on from here, or into Q&A, whatever it is from there. What do you do then? So firstly, take a moment to enjoy it being over, and there will always be people that get in touch with you or talk to you afterwards about it, to ask you questions, want to connect with you. Maybe they'll even ask you about, how did you do that? Was that intimidating? It might not even be about the content. Maybe they've just heard about you from somewhere else. Enjoy that first. That there's nothing quite like the buzz when it's done. Enjoying that moment, and then take any of your mental notes once you've got a moment. Write them down and put them into your tablet, whatever it is, your phone, and take time to review it. Then afterwards, review physically what you could have done better. Did you hide behind a podium? Did you walk around the stage? Did you struggle with a mic in your hand? Did you have a headset? Did you hate the shoes that you're wearing? I'm a no high heels on stage type person, unless I'm on a panel and I'm sitting down, because I would trip over them every single time. So review these things and see what works. Did your content fly? Were people yawning and looking at the ceiling? Were people interacting with you, in the audience? What parts did they like? Did they find the funny things funny when you intended them to be funny? So make notes about all those things as early as you can after the event, so that they're fresh in your mind. And when you come to review them later or make improvements for your next talk, they still mean something to you. And then apply the improvements that you need. Everybody has it. I don't care how long you've been talking and how awesome you are or how famous you are. Everybody has something that they can improve on. I mean, we've all seen videos of Beyonce's most recent concerts, and there's been things that have gone wrong during the concert. Her horse didn't go off stage, or people didn't move when they were supposed to. She's not going to ignore that and just rinse and repeat the same thing the next time around. They're going to review it, and they're going to improve it, and they're going to do it better than the next time. So you should as well. And the more you do that, the more confident you're going to feel, and you're going to need less preparation and less rehearsal before your next event. From there, you're just going to naturally feel more comfortable with it, because you'll be anticipating the things that matter in that instance then from there. So yes, this is what we have for today. I'm happy to hear any questions. I don't know if any came in. I know I picked up one with regards to things that people were afraid of. And there's my LinkedIn if any of you want to connect. But I see a couple of questions there. So one person, Foizia, I may have pronounced that wrong, feel free to correct me, has said that their fear of public speaking stems from the fact that they feel like they might use the wrong expressions and it might make grammatical errors. Well, I would say go for it. I would rather make the mistake in trying to communicate something with somebody than make no mistakes and tell nobody anything remotely interesting. Working a lot in things like diversity and inclusion, I find that a minefield when it comes to terms and saying the right things and using the right attitude towards stuff. So I will always put my hand in the air and go, I'm not entirely sure if this is the right term to use, so correct me if I'm wrong. So if you do something like someone says to you afterwards, oh, you used the wrong expression. Well, firstly, that person is an idiot, because nobody does that to somebody when they've just presented to a whole room. And secondly, then just do it differently the next time. It's all a learning experience. As long as the message that you're trying to communicate is still clear, nobody cares whether you have a spelling mistake on your presentation. That should probably be picked up during your rehearsals anyway. And nobody cares if you used a different phrase or a less eloquent English maybe to communicate it. All that matters is that the message that you tried to get across got across by whatever means necessary from there. So as somebody who's not the most eloquent person in the world, there's a lady that I work with in a cyber tech community who, I just wish I could be as eloquent as she is, But, there's things we all got to strive for. I try and work towards communicating clearly with people, regardless of their backgrounds or their education or their languages. And, sometimes that will mean that I'm going to get it wrong. But sure, if I get it wrong and it hurts someone's feelings, or it's received negatively, then, if people let me know, that I'm grateful for that opportunity to do it better the next time. And Chimaka is afraid of not being able to captivate the audience's attention. And this is where rehearsal comes into it. So, like I say, my sister, no interest whatsoever in tech. But if I can get her to afterwards repeat any one thing from the presentation that I have shown her, then I know I'm able to captivate the attention of a technical audience. So in your case, then attempt to rehearse your presentation with different people, family members or people in work, and certainly try and pick somebody who wouldn't ordinarily be interested in the topic that you're going to present on. And if they can walk away having gathered something from it, then you have it in the bag. It's like my ultimate test as such. Is I always say when I began working in tech, I always used to say that if I can teach my mother how to do this, then I can teach anybody how to do this, because my mother is not a great listener when it comes to telling her how to do things technically. But if she can walk away with the tools or with the skills, then I know I can teach anybody else how to do that. So in the same way with public speaking, if you're worried about captivating the audience's attention, there's lots of tools you can use with regards to colors and presentations and sounds and things like that. Work off of the premise that you don't have any of that. What can you do as just you with your words to captivate their attention, and rehearse that and test it out on lots of different people and see what works then from there. And once you get honest feedback from the people that you're testing it with, then there's no reason why that wouldn't work when you're on a stage and you're presenting an audience from there. And then Dorothy is saying that she's afraid of looking dumb, even if she does know what she's saying. And that's a common one, and it's probably more common among women than it is among men as well. Because judgment is something that we feel a lot, and we judge ourselves so harshly even before we've even opened our mouth. But with that one, what I would say, Dorothy, is that, and certainly when you're speaking, you have fantastic energy, but when you're talking, the people are here to hear what it is that you have to say. So I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear what it is that you're trying to deliver if I'm here listening to you. So the way I would look at that is that there's nothing you can say that would be dumb, because I've already shown you that I want to be here and I want to hear it. So you need to just think about that. Think about that even if it's one person or it's 100 people or 1,000 people, they've come here to listen to what it is that you have to say. So that strikes the dumb out straight off. It doesn't matter what words you use, what kind of, way you present it. They're here for a purpose, and that purpose is the words that are coming out of your mouth. So strike that one from there. Then Maureen has said about how do you deal with self-esteem issues to conquer stage fright or speaking to a crowd. A lot of that can be dissipated again with rehearsing over and over and over. Now, if it's something that really terrifies you and you say rehearsing isn't helping, or you're working with your family rather than maybe with professionals, I would always say there's a couple of things you can do to push a little further on that. You can join speaker groups. There's lots of them with different names. And can I think of names? Any of them? No, but I'm sure if you Google them, you'll find them locally as well. Find somebody that you're connected to, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, and ask them, would they be willing to give you some guidance with it, or listen to a presentation that you've got and give you some feedback. Because even in the action of asking a person you don't know, you've shown yourself that you can be brave before you even get on a stage or get in front of that person to speak then at all. And the self-esteem comes automatically with the more you do it. So for me, I made myself, like I just said, anytime anybody ever asks me to speak at anything, I'm going to say yes. Even if every single molecule in my body goes, no, I'm going to say yes, because this is something that I want to get better at, and this is something that I want to do. So I make myself say yes. And again, it doesn't matter how big those audiences are. And in many cases, you'll find yourself in front of voluntary groups or not-for-profit organizations, because they need the speakers and they don't have the budget for these things. And that's going to build your confidence. So doing something more and more that scares you takes the fear away and builds the confidence more. I had said just before the call started there, I was saying to Dorothy that I'm going to go on high ropes today. And I am very much afraid of heights. But I am damned if I'm going to let that beat me. So I'm going to go on high ropes. Say there may well be crying, and I may well abandon it halfway through, but I'm prepared to at least do it, because I honestly believe that the more I attempt to do these things, the less scary they're going to become for me. So I did it with public speaking, and I did it with my learning technology. I did it with parenting. I mean, when you parent, you suddenly have this baby that no one teaches you what you're supposed to do to mind it, rear it. All of these things happen, and it takes the fear out of it by attempting to do them more and more and putting yourself in front of that fear. I think that might, oh no, there's some more messages in there. So thanks. Cool. We have one more there from Olatunji. How can I do away with filler words? Filler words is an interesting one. Where I'm from, we naturally say hun at the end of every sentence, and it took me years to work that out of my language. What you'll do, and M's are ones as well. We all use ums and M's and ahs, or whatever we lean on from there. Practice with that one. So what you can do is read, talk about something randomly for a few minutes, and I would suggest use something like Zoom or whatever you have access to. So that's something you can practice with yourself. Do it either live, talking to yourself, but what's actually better to do is to record yourself for a few minutes, so you can actually do that on your phone as well. Choose to talk about something. Maybe you're going to just talk about your day. Talk to your phone as if you're talking to your friend, and you're going to talk about your day, because you'll be more relaxed doing that to begin with. And then play it back. And you're going to hate that for the first few minutes. We all do. But listen to hear what your filler words are, what the sounds are. I'm so aware of the fact that I keep saying now that I hadn't even realized I was doing it beforehand. And then start working to take them out. So do it again. Tell your, record yourself speaking about your day, and pay attention to the words that you're putting in. It's something that is going to come with practice and with time. Ask other people for what it is that you do. Maybe they'll see something differently. But I find recording it and playing back to yourself is the most dignified way of doing it. If you're worried about embarrassing yourself in front of people, do that first. It's only you that's embarrassed. It's only you that's going to hear it. And you can work a lot of that out of your system before you get in front of people. So for me, like I said earlier, I used to scratch my head when I got nervous. And there's nothing weirder than someone on stage who's doing is it Charlie Chaplin used to do that? To scratch my head the whole time. And as soon as I realized I did it, I started to present in trousers that had pockets. And I put my hands in my pockets until my hands got used to being by my sides, and then I stopped wearing pants with pockets, and I stopped scratching my head. So you have to train yourself to do it differently than you've done it before, and those kind of things usually take a few goes round to do it. And as the IO has said that in case anyone needs it, what helps with the nervousness before speech is smelling nice and wearing my favorite or clothing that I really like. It boosts confidence a lot and makes me feel like I can stand on any stage. Absolutely. Be comfortable. Like I say, high heels look great on stage, but I am not comfortable in high heels. So I'll generally, I've been known to present in Converse runners and everything. Sometimes I wear them with a small heel, but I know it's something that adds to my anxiety that I start to worry about whether I'm going to trip over them or not. So absolutely, yes. Something that makes you feel better. If it's a scent, a perfume, if it's having a necklace, maybe that somebody gave you, or a fidget ring. I have many of them here on my desk that you can have that will keep that energy preoccupied while you're focusing on the job that you've got to do. And I also says that as somebody who enjoyed writing and speaking, they've taken a lot of public speaking classes and have taken some courses too. And through this experience over the years, have learned to cover up the nervousness with words like and they're also called filler words. They tend to do it no matter how hard they try. And as a professional, what practical tips or advice do you give to stop this? So like I say, recording yourself speaking so that you can see what your filler words are, and then do it a few times. Put some time aside for that, whether you do it weekly or monthly or whichever. And ask somebody, if you're presenting in work or presenting at an event, ask somebody that's there to record you so that you can play it back sooner than maybe any official recording comes out, and you can learn about these things too. But it can be gotten rid of. It's something that you just need to work out of your system and such from there. So Dorothy, I brought it right up to the minute and kind of treated all those as questions. Is there anything else that you would like me to mention?
Absolutely not. Thank you so much, Jennifer. You pretty much covered every single thing. You have decimated my fears of public speaking, and I'm really, really grateful. I think the one thing that I took out today from today's session is nothing can go wrong. That is within your control, and that is one thing that if I do recall for every public speaking that I have gone to or been part of, or for future sessions, it would be just amazing, to keep me going. And thank you to Ayer for mentioning that, put on your makeup, put on your perfume as well. That actually does go a long way. It does go a long way to smell yourself while you are on stage. And I'm just really excited. Just so everyone knows, yes, Jennifer, just so everyone knows, we're going to be having Jennifer again next week. We have 2 more sessions with her, and the next one is going to be empowering the individual. It is going to be a power-packed session. Jennifer, can you just give us, just in 2 seconds, what should we be expecting from next week's session?
So I would say bring your pen and paper, because I'm going to give you some actionable items from this one, and that will be something that you'll get to do over time, and you'll see the long-term improvements from it. I'm going to take all of the little things that I've seen work for my mentees or wentees in the past, and then I'm going to share them in this session around empowerment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I had a great time. For everyone who joined us, again, please let us know what you thought about today's session. You can go to Jennifer and send her a thank you as well. She is on LinkedIn. You can also follow us on our social media handles. We will be so excited to respond to any questions you have. And again, we're going to be sending out the invites for next week. So be sure to register. Wendy will make sure that you do get those invites in your calendar. But thank you so much, Jennifer. You have been a fantastic facilitator. I totally love you. We appreciate you as a community. You are just an amazing human being, and God bless you.
Thanks, Dora. Take care. See you
Thank
next
you
week.
so much.
Bye.
Absolutely. To everyone, have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next week, Friday. Bye, everyone. Bye, Jennifer.